Stop playing your chords like this. That's how your piano playing sounds at the moment when you play chords. That's totally okay. I've got one or two little tips that might be able to help you. My name is Isaac, also known as Keys with Tang. I would say that this is a pretty straightforward lesson. Hopefully there's nothing too complicated or too crazy. I've tried to keep this one beginner friendly. And today we're going to talk a little bit about chord voicings, inversions, and how that can sort of help you make it not sound as dry or as boring. So as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe if you take anything from this video. I've got lots of videos coming out and it really does help me to make more. So what are chord voicings? Let's get into it. So what are chord voicings? If you ever took a music class in high school or a beginner music theory class, you would have known that a chord is generally speaking made up of three notes: the root, the third, and the fifth. Like I've got here, I've got E flat major here. Now, the root, the third, and the fifth can be arranged differently, and those different arrangements of them is simply what we call a chord voicing. Now, it doesn't have to just be for triads; it can be for any chord. Those are all different chord voicings of G sharp minor 7. So, chord voicings are just the way that the notes in the chord are arranged. Nothing crazy, it's just a fancy word. Now, before we talk about how to make them sound good, I want to bring up this word called inversions. Now, inversions, if we go back to just the triad again, inversions are different positions of chords, if that sort of makes sense. So I think it's best shown by demonstrating. This sort of standard way of playing a chord is known as root position. This is the root of the chord, root position. Then if we move the E flat or the root up to the top, we have this. Now this is first inversion. If we do the same thing, moving the G, which is the third, up to the top, we get second inversion. And now if you notice, if you do this again with a B flat, we'd be back at root position. So let's do another example with 4 notes this time. This is D minor 7. So this is root position because the root is at the bottom. Then moving the D up, we get first inversion, second inversion, and third inversion. Third inversion because we got 4 notes this time. And then if we do that one more time, we get back to root position. So that's what an inversion is, and it's just something that I think it's good for musicians to have in your language. Cool. So now I think we're ready to talk about what makes a good chord voicing. So you'll notice at the intro, when I played Holy Forever, everything I played was in root position. So that all in root position. And it doesn't necessarily sound bad objectively, although it's pretty close. That's one of the big reasons why it sounded so monotonous and so boring and almost jagged. So something that I was taught in my piano lessons growing up and even at university is that people's ears tend to hear the topmost voicing or the topmost note of what we play. So if I asked you to hum this chord that I'll try and play at the same volume, what would you hum? It would probably be da. That's the topmost chord. If I asked you to do the same thing here, it would be da, which is the highest note, so the outermost note. And that's, I think it's just how our human ears work. So it tends to hear the highest note that we play. So we can use that to our advantage because the different inversions mean we have a different note up the top. So instead of playing everything in root position, we could try and mix in some inversions. And one general rule of thumb, this is quite important, is that in general, minimizing the distance moved within your chord voicings generally sounds better. So instead of, if I play F to C, instead of going F, I can simply go F. Now, this is just a general rule, and it doesn't apply everywhere. But in general, that's quite a big jump, as opposed to where we just move these two notes down into first inversion in C major, it's just smoother. It makes it a little bit smoother, and that's a general trick that we can use. You'll notice when I went from the G minor to the C, that's a big jump there. One thing that might have sounded better is using second inversion in C to minimize the distance moved between my chord voicing, so it's a little less jagged. So a question you might now have is, how do I know which inversion to start with? And I'll make a longer video about this, but I think it's good to try interact with the melody. That's a good starting point. So for Holy Forever, you'll notice we landed on the D. So the 4 chord is the B flat major. We might want to play it in second inversion so that the uppermost note lines up with the melody. So we get, right? So interacting with the melody and minimizing the distances that your chords move in general will help make it sound more interesting and less clashy, less jagged than keeping everything in root position. So let me show you the same example from Holy Forever, the chorus, using the principles that we've applied today. Just the chorus again, and we'll see how we go. Nice and easy. You'll notice when I went from the D minor to the G minor, what I do? The D minor to the G minor, there was still a bit of a jump, but remember, these are just general rules and principles. It doesn't mean you have to stick to it every time. I did that because the melody went up there, and I thought it would sound good. So let me remind you of those 2 ideas that you can use and mix into your playing. Minimizing and smoothing out the distances between your chord voicings, i.e. moving around less or moving around less suddenly, and then mixing in the melody will definitely help. I'll make a longer video on that. I hope you've taken something from this video that you can apply to playing at church or practicing at home, rehearsing for a gig, whatever it might be. Hope that was helpful. Leave any questions you have down below. Please do that. I try to answer to all of you. I try and answer every single question that I get. I've got a buy me a coffee page if you'd like to bless me more directly. But other than that, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.